Hello, my name is Rob Kinneen. I'm the Outreach Director for NATIV's North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems. Today I'm going to be making a cockle spot shrimp soup, corn soup, garnished with smoked salmon, black seaweed. While corn isn't indigenous to Alaska, this is a lot of ingredients that are kind of close to my heart. So looking forward to sharing this with you. The first thing I want to do is show a little trick that I've done as a chef in a restaurant, but also even as a home cook. What I like to do is save my shrimp shells or crab shells. From a Dungeness to a king crab, you pop those shells, throw them in a Ziploc bag, you wrap them up, squirrel them away until you get a suitable amount. This is 2 cups, 1 deli container of shrimp shells. And then just kind of eyeball it. I had some extra onion. I like putting turnip actually into stocks. With turnips in a vegetable stock, you actually don't get the sulfur, but you get the sweet kind of a vegetal sweetness. So, this has got a little fennel, a little garlic, a little onion. The nice thing about making stocks at home is that if you have an allergy or a preference, you can just use what you want to use. So this is going to come out to about 2 quarts is what I'm hoping. And it's shy. So I'm just gonna bump it up with a little water. Again, I basically got all this up to a boil, dropped it down to a simmer, let it go for about 40 minutes, and you're gonna get all that flavor from that shell. You don't need to cook it all day. Actually, even if you overcook it, it starts getting a little bitter and acrid. So I would recommend about 40 minutes to an hour with shrimp shells or crustacean shells. And we're gonna set this aside for the soup. We're actually going to be using cornmeal, and we're going to be using it, kind of blooming it like a roux. So we're going to cook all the vegetables, add this, let it kind of bloom on the bottom, add a little stock to it, and mix it up. And so I'm going to use this. This is great for lifting up fish so it doesn't break on a pan, but it's also good for just kind of working the bottom of a pan to make sure it doesn't and nothing catches on there and burns. A little tip that I learned in Louisiana working with roux: if you have things that like just roux, gumbos, all these sauces that are so thick and long cooking, if it does start to stick, just turn off the heat and let it sit for 5 minutes. You do that and it's gonna, the whatever's on the bottom, if it's cornmeal or roux or something else, it'll lift up off there and it won't burn. So just patience is a virtue. It took me a long time to learn that. The other thing, these cockles are cooked. So they've been cooked and clean and processed. So I just chopped them up so that we get that nice equal bite ratio that I've talked about, where you're gonna have a little bite of cockle, and that's gonna be nice. Sometimes in Alaska you can buy these 1-pound razor clams. Those are commercially available, and I always say save the juice on that. These little bit of juice was left in there, so we kind of put it in the bag, but that's what it is. The spot shrimp, the same thing. What I would say is you peel your spot shrimp. If you have that special someone over and you want to have a good Saturday night, maybe you want to give them a bunch of whole shrimp. You're feeding a bunch of buddies that are coming over for whatever social occasion. Maybe you want to chop it up and get a little more length out of it. So we'll leave that up to you. But our pot is looking at about medium-high heat. So I'm going to add the salad oil. And we're looking at about 1 ounce. All right, she's going quick here. I'm gonna add the onions. We're already getting a good sizzle on that. Fennel. And by the way, cooking is not just about doing, it's using all your senses. So you're listening, you're tasting, you're looking, you're touching, you're feeling. I'm hearing that, and it's good. There's a sizzle and things are moving. I'm looking at the color. There's a good color on stuff, but it's not black. It's a good caramel color. Gotta keep it moving though, so it doesn't burn. You can smell it, but that sizzle means it's not sticking or steaming. I'm gonna add the turnips as well. Now everything here is a good solid medium dice. Again, when I'm cutting my vegetables, you pay for the whole thing. I don't generally peel anything unless it's like a squash or something, but like potatoes, turnips, generally speaking, I kind of leave everything on there. And I'm putting the potatoes in now too. A little feisty in there, huh? So what I'm doing is we're just gonna let this cook. You're seeing a little color down there on the bottom of the pan. So what I'm gonna do, add just a little more oil. Add the half a cup of masa. And again, it's gonna kind of bloom. So we're gonna get that nice round corn flavor. So there is a corn soup, but it doesn't have kernels of corn or hominy per se. Another thing I'm gonna do, which isn't always, it seems like recipes always say, get your oil medium-high heat and add the garlic first. Your garlic is the most delicate and fragile little piece here. So I'm gonna add it at the end and let it bloom versus add it at the beginning and then burn. So I'm gonna let this kind of go for a minute. I'm gonna actually hold off on this and wait until I get, now you see, listen, you still get a little sizzle. What's happening is all that cornmeal is absorbing the oil, all the vegetable juice that's kind of been cooking up in there, and it's just blooming. And if you can smell it, you kind of get that cornmeal kind of masa smell, sort of rising up a little bit. Really nice. Starting to see a little stickage right here. I can scrape that off even with a rubber spatula. This is a high temp rubber spatula. You don't want to use a low temp rubber spatula because you'll end up eating your spatula in your soup, and you don't want that. So you hear it, it's still sizzling. I can smell everything. And again, I'm not smelling burning, so we're doing pretty good here. You know, I've got my onions cooking, delicate stuff like turnips, but then the potatoes, you don't want a medium done potato. You want your potatoes cooked all the way through. The medium dice will increase the surface area and decrease the size. So we should be getting it probably about halfway cooked right now. You've got the onions breaking down. Again, if you, look into the pan, and I move it all to the side here, you got this little bit here. So I'm gonna actually, at this point, add the garlic, dried oregano, fresh, dried, do what you gotta do. I actually like the dried oregano in the sense because it adds like this lengthy flavor, a lengthier finish to the dish. So now we're starting to get a little more sizzle in there, we're listening. What I'm gonna do is I took my 2 quarts of stock, I put it in a pan that I can handle, and I'm gonna pour in, this is 2 quarts, I'm gonna put in just like a half a cup and just kind of get things moving again. All right? See the steam coming up, don't burn yourself. I'm just kind of making sure everything's lifting. That steam also just kind of puts a quick cook onto stuff. Like, you know, all your vegetables are gonna be cooked a little bit better, or cooked all the way through. You get that blast of heat. All right. It's kind of just like lifting a fond or lifting a sear off a pan. I'm gonna add a little bit more, and you can see where the cornmeal is actually just starting to thicken up a little bit. So it's kind of dissipating, which is pretty cool. So at NATIVS, North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems, our mission is accessibility to and education of indigenous foods. Our food concept is pre-contact. So we tend to not use post-contact items like beef, pork, or chicken. We don't use dairy or cheese. We don't finish sauces with butter. So this is something that I would call very similar to a chowder, but we're doing it in a way that's that's gluten and dairy free, just by definition of how we're cooking. And indigenous food was gluten and dairy free, low glycemic index, a lot of good for you starches that take a long time to process. And it's exciting to kind of taste this. Now, you know, you can do what you can do at home. You know, you want to add a little Tabasco sauce or finish with some butter. I get it. A little bacon, be great. But you know, this is where this recipe is coming from, the inspiration behind this. So I just hope you appreciate that. If you look down, you can see again, like the cornmeal is dissipating into it. What's happening is that cornmeal is dried and it's opening up and it's expanding, and now it's almost just becoming the sauce. So this was about a half a cup of cornmeal to 2 quarts of stock. And hopefully what I'm thinking is that this is gonna basically turn out to look like a chowder, nice, thick, and velvety, but we'll see. The other thing about cooking is that it is not about what's written down or the process. You also have to look at it and think about it. So for example, is the cornmeal super dry? Is it old? Is it ground finer or is it bigger? It'll take a little longer to cook. So you have to kind of, again, you have to think about what you're doing and the product that you're working with. This is actually a house ground cornmeal from Heritage Corn. So this might be a different result than a super dry one that you would buy at a store, which is fine. You just have to realize what you're working with. I'm feeling really good about this. It's starting to bubble up a little bit. We got a little things going on. You can see the viscosity. We're starting to get a little thicker. You can tell by the potatoes, by just looking at things, the potatoes are probably about halfway through. I bet they're, you know, I bet you got a little bite to it. Something to think about, you might, if you have a different product, like a finer, like maybe a masa harina or a corn flour, you might need a whip or a whisk instead of a spatula, or maybe that's even where something like this comes through, where you can kind of just move it and make sure it's, you know, moving and not clumping. I was talking to somebody about how their grandma, not to throw shade on somebody's grandma, but they would make a soup and they would thicken it with cornmeal, so they'd have the soup going and they'd add in the cornmeal, and the biggest thing was that they'd have to stir it and stir it and stir it and make sure that it wasn't clumping up. So that's kind of where this idea came through, to kind of cook it like this. So as you can see, we're starting to get a nice viscosity, thickening the stock. It's not sticking on the bottom. All right, I'm gonna just go for it. We're gonna do the whole situation. When in doubt, stir the soup. So I've added I finished up the 2 quarts of shell stock to the broth, or to the pan, to the pot. It's coming up to a boil. I was feeling really good about it. And I'm realizing, I think the magic ratio will be 1/2 cup of cornmeal to 1 quart of stock. So what I'm getting at is it's coming up shy. I'm going to add, just like my friend's shady grandma, a little more cornmeal to it and mix it up and see what happens. So what I'm hoping, and you know, I'm gonna preface this by just saying I've been a chef for a long time, but this is an Indigenous food lab. So I'm learning real time on tape. And here we go. So I switched to this, so it's got, again, a little more like it's gonna replicate a whisk. And I'm just gonna keep working this and kind of hope to bloom before it sticks to the bottom. I want this to look like a nice thick soup. Think about a chowder. And I can already tell the corrective measure is gonna work out great. I'm kind of using the bottom of this, like this is flat. The bottom of this, again, like a thick gauge soup pot is gonna have a nice flat bottom. If it's aluminum or something inferior, it's gonna start rippling and it's gonna be hard to feel the bottom and make sure it's not sticking. So I can feel this and know that it's working. I can look at the bubbles coming up. I'm gonna turn this down just a hair. All right, so while this is going, and I just tasted a potato, and it's toothy. It's cooked through, but it's not like delicious. So I'm gonna let this kind of just sing for a little bit longer. Again, this is kind of where we're at. You know, if you want to add sometimes like a little shot of acid, apple cider or something might work. If you're at home and you want to use a squeeze of lime, that's great. But we tend to kind of stick with things that are a little more, you know, from the Americas, from Turtle Island. So apple cider vinegar will usually be our kind of acid of choice. Now you're looking at this, you can start seeing even right now, you see it's starting to you see that viscosity, it's starting to get really nice. All right. So while this is happening, I want to kind of point out again, you know, this is a super hot soup. It's cooking for a little while. And what I don't want to do, if this had turkey in it or bison or an ingredient that needed to be cooked through, you would want to add it in at the beginning when we add the stock in and let it simmer. But you know, we're using spot shrimp. These are super delicate. Any shrimp that you use is going to be super delicate. So you want to add it in at the end to get the full beauty of the shrimp going on. So you've got the tenderness, the sweetness, but also that delicate bite is going to be cooked through, but not stewed to death. The same thing with these cockles. You know, we took these, we harvested them, we cooked them, we cleaned them. They're ready to rumble. So we just chopped them up into like some good bite-sized pieces. We're gonna add it right to the soup, and that's it. And then, you know, and then we're gonna pretty much just serve right away. All right, I can just tell by looking at it, but the vegetables are starting to kind of fall apart a little bit. Just had a bite of a potato, cooked all the way through. A little more salt. I'm gonna add the shrimp. And the cockles. All right, we're looking good. I'm gonna use a spoon or this ladle here. I'm just gonna show you kind of what that, you see, so you see how that corn is still on there, but it's, you know, it's coating the back of a spoon. You've got a little thickness to it. Best case scenario, best practices would have been like to use all of the masa at the beginning, or I'm sorry, the cornmeal at the beginning. So it's not even as thick as it could be right now, but you just look at that shrimp. It's already just, boom, it's beautiful. Got that little vibrant color. I'm not gonna wait anymore. So we're gonna pull this off to the side. I know it's cooked all the way through. I'm super excited about it. Turn this off. All right. All right, so you got the shrimp, you got the cockles, everything in there. We're gonna zhuzh it up a little bit. Again, maybe you got a bunch of friends and family coming over. This is good. Maybe you got a special someone coming over. Want to get a good weekend going on. We're gonna garnish it up with just a little bit of salmon. We had some fennel in there, so I'm gonna add just some of the fronds just to give it a little something, something. And a little black seaweed. Shrimp, cockle, corn, soup, garnished with smoked salmon and black seaweed. Looking pretty good. If you can see the the viscosity, again, like the thickness of that soup, got a nice thickness to it. It's gonna keep the cold out. Lovely. The salmon adds a little round richness to it, the salinity from the black seaweed. I've got the lovely bite of the shrimp. These are some of my favorite things in the world, the spot shrimp. All right. Well, I'm gonna finish this. You enjoy yourself.